Welcome back. It's Tuesday,
October 4th. It's Rocktober 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 622.
It really is. Can't believe it.
I feel like this. Yeah, me either. I feel like it's been 3 years in the making. We are back at the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. I wasn't honestly ever sure we were ever going to get back there. A busy week the first year that they've had a 2-day race. We'll get into our intro here in a minute, but for those of you who don't even know or haven't, or just kind of slipped your mind or gone over your head, it's a 2-day event this year. So you're listening to this on a Tuesday, in 48 hours, pretty close to now, the women's race, professional age group, and then I think 3 age group waves of the men will be going off in Kona. They'll have a day off in between on Friday, and then the professional men and the rest of the age group men go on Saturday. Again, it's the first year they've ever had this in Kona. They say they're going to do it again next year, but it's back. And I'm not going to eat a little crow here, but I'm going to maybe
go for it.
Have like a feather of one. Yeah, I'll have a feather of one. Obviously there was no Kona in 2020. There was none in 21. They went to St. George. And while I won't waver in that, I still think that you are going to see the rotation of Ironman World Championship full distance like they do the 70.3, and I'm all for it. I think it's better for the sport. I think it's a more fair proposition for everyone involved, not just for reaching athletes, that live in other parts of the world, Asia, Europe, to make it more accessible to participate in the World Championships. But I also think it's better suited for professional athletes that are well-rounded, not just the ones that can figure out the Kona heat and the Kona wind to perform well on race day. When you have other athletes that are bigger, maybe taller, bigger frames, have a harder time competing. That doesn't mean they're not the best in the world. Just means they can't be the best in the world in the heat. I mean, and look at the Brownlee brothers as an example. But that's this week. I'm pumped about it. We've actually got 3 athletes competing, one on Thursday, 2 on Saturday. And we may even talk a little bit about them today in the cast. But if it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. You have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, and that your time is very valuable, and we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do a lot of race recaps and a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We talk quite a lot about what our own athletes are going through. We work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner-level triathletes looking to their very first sprint or 5K, all the way up through elite-level amateurs heading to Kona. We have 3 there now. We're just trying to get back, and then everyone in between. And we use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, phone calls, and the like to drive the discussion today. We also utilize our amazing community that you can find in Facebook. You can search that group, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. Amazing community, just a great place with awesome people, very supportive. And again, it's been a lively bunch here as of late. The door has been swinging wide open with new members coming in that just heard of the podcast or got recommended to. So we don't do a very good job of this because, frankly, neither one of us spend an enormous amount of time on Facebook doing Facebook-y marketing things. But welcome to all our new members in the Facebook group. It's a lot to keep track of, but just know that we appreciate you, and we hope you can continue to be an important part of our awesome community. Got a great culture in there. But yeah, participate in there. Don't be a lurker, and gain some knowledge from the experienced people in there. And we'll frequently go in there and pop in and do a Q&A session. So we'll answer some of your questions on the podcast. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads. And quickly on that, before we talk about our agenda, it's always obvious to me when, like, I got you probably got it too, like a request to advertise on our podcast. And like, we love your podcast, and having listened to what you said, like, we think we'd be a great fit. And I'm like,
Yeah.
You haven't. It's like you haven't listened. Like Form Goggles, which is it's a up and coming brand. They emailed yesterday. Yeah, we having listened to, we really feel like, I'm like, you haven't, because if you listen to all of them, you would pretty much know that we're not interested. We appreciate you, but we're not interested just because, I'm sure that your goggles are great. I'm sure the nutrition products are great. I'm sure your avocado mattresses are great and your health insurance is great, but we don't do it. We're sponsored by the people, and we love you guys. We'll keep this ad free and sponsor free, but we do have an agenda, like I said, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
The People's Podcast.
The People's Podcast. That's probably what Brad Stolberg's call his now.
We're definitely, we're definitely not hype machines. So yeah, I mean, that Facebook group is really good. I would say, we've got over, I think 6,000 people in there, and it's all been really word of mouth. So that's a really good thing in my head, because I think people find out about it through the podcast or friends or whatever. So that's why I think it's just a good group, pretty solid. We keep it, I guess, I don't know, safe place to ask questions. It's our safe space.
We keep it a safe place to ask. It's one of the safest places on the internet. No, it is. It's a great community. It is.
Hey, listen, man, I got to say this about Kona. The people that are doing it, kudos to them, because to me, it seems like a lot of work to do Kona, flying over there and renting a place for like 10 days. And it seems like a big ordeal, expensive ordeal. So yeah. Huge and expensive ordeal.
But I will say, like, haven't seen, because it's been 2 years. I haven't seen pictures. We have friends that are racing. We have athletes that are racing, and there's kind of like looking along at and reading looking at some of the videos some of the professionals have done. It is a special place. I get that. I 100%. I don't think it has the infrastructure to make this a long-term thing, nor do I feel like the locals will put up with it for more than a year or two from the 2-day format. And if they go back to one, then Ironman will be like, sorry, peace out. We'll go somewhere else. We can have a 2-day event, because 2 more days or 1 more day, it's twice the registration. It's also twice the boost the economy, the local economy. So again, different topic for today. We'll do our Kona cast, which we do every year. We'll do that on Thursday. We'll talk about the contenders, the people we think are going to have great days. And I'll say, like, everyone's got the Norwegians for Gustav Iden and Kristen Blumenfeld down as like their automatic 1-2s. I think you might be surprised. I'm not going to put my picks in, but I have a weird feeling about this year, and what might happen and who might be the players. But again, we'll do that on Thursday. It's always a fun cast to roll through, and then it'll be the day that they fire up. They got the firing squad going. They'll fire up with the ladies race, which again I do think is awesome, because the female pros in years past on the 1-day event, a lot of them are impeded by and really disrupted by either the slower, probably shouldn't be there racing professionally men. They get bogged down. It's you always watching like the videos when they're covering, like especially like Daniela Reef, and she'll just like blow by some of the back end like male pros, and then they'll speed up and try to pass her again. And then she actually got busted for a drafting penalty. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, for drafting off the guy she had just passed, who surged right back in front of her. So that does create another level of fairness, I think, which is awesome. Still not sure why they just don't start everybody at once, but we can only talk about that so much. Well, again, we'll talk about that later. But we do have, I think, a pretty good topic. And you said something that resonated with me about it seemed like a lot of work to get to Kona. And from a logistics standpoint, having had to help some athletes with this, and then also like how much you invest financially to go, it ain't cheap. Then you think about flights there, and then the whole place is just jam-packed crowd. It's basically like putting 500 people inside of Abercrombie and Fitch. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been inside of Fitch, but it's like,
it's usually like that.
It's made for like, it's made for like 4 people, and they got the music blaring. It's like they should hand out Xanax. I mean, I haven't been in one in like 10 years, but that's the feel I used to get. You could walk by and like smell it, and the music's bumping. I'm like, that just gives me anxiety walking by. That's basically what it feels like on the ground. There's so many people in such a small space. But it's a lot of work. And that's kind of one of that you and I talked a little bit before we went on air today, about a topic, and I think we were along the same lines. Mine was about attention span, and yours was about,
are you doing what it takes?
Yes.
That's what
Very simple.
yeah, I mean, because like I said, man, I had a really like kind of every once in a while I have a little discussion with myself, and this was kind of a long one. And coming off of Wisconsin, I had a good time training and everything going into it, and it really dawned on me. I've done this pretty much every year, and I think a lot of people fall into this category where you do a big race and then it's kind of like fold up the tent. And this year, I've committed at least a little bit to staying in the pool. And then I was like, is this enough? Is this enough? I have these aspirations that I've always had, and you know me forever, podium this, podium that, all this, whatever stuff. And I'm always like in the ballpark, and we have fun with that. And I think it's okay. But really in my soul, I was like, boy, if you really want that, and this could apply to anything, are you really doing what it takes to get there? And I thought to myself yesterday, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, the answer is no, my friend. It wasn't a mean discussion, but it was just sort of you just got to put in more work. And that work for me starts now. I've got a plan that I'm ready to go with, and I'm going to stick with it. And I'm going to just see what kind of difference it makes, because we talk about like analogies all the time, and it's sort of like how I handled most stuff in college or whatever, what I would just cram for the exam and get by and do okay. But if I would have studied every day, just a little bit of studying and stayed up with it, then you get into the exam and it kind of goes smooth. You're not worried about it, and it just sort of takes care of itself. So it's the little things right now. And, I guess I'm self-coaching myself a little bit in the sense that, like, I know if I want to show up next year and really kind of ever do, frankly, time's running out for me. So I'm going to be like, if I want to do what I really think I can do, which is much better than I've ever done, or at least better, I got to do that. And I got to do the little things. And I think that starts now. And you're thinking with attention span walks in perfectly to that, because it is about staying attentive to what's going on all the time. It doesn't have to be massive, but it just needs to be on the right direction.
Yeah, it's a great topic, I think, for this time of year. And we referenced it on one of last week's podcasts, that when we said, do you really want to get better, or do you just like the thought of getting better? Because let's be honest, 90% of people, not just triathletes, people talk a big game, but don't act on it. Right? They're not willing to make the sacrifices. They're not willing to make the jump. They're not willing to do what's required. To me, it's like it's 80% of people sitting down at Starbucks. You go to Starbucks, you sit down, have a coffee, and you can just sit there and listen to, everybody's got this idea. This is the way to make passive income. We can really go big here. We can scale. This is it. I can bring you into my fold. We can sell this. And then you never see them come to fruition, either because you lack the heart, you lack the ability to execute, right? You're not committed for the long term, or you get too scared and you stop, right? The most successful, and we say this all the time, the most successful athletes that we work with and you see, period. And I'm not talking about just performing well from a physiological, PR performance standpoint that, crush races and are the top 1%. I'm just talking about the ones that get the most out of the time they have and the ability and what they want to get out of it. It's consistency, not just for a month, but for a year. Right. And that's had this conversation, a very similar conversation earlier today via email. An athlete talking about things and asking questions, and he's like, he's like, I do really feel like, this base season is the most important, and I've never really thought about that, that way. And I said, it's the most important. It's the foundation in which the rest of the year is built on, and people just discount it, right? And the highest performing athletes, like I said, the athletes said, we got 3 athletes in Kona this weekend. All 3 of them are more concerned with the work they are doing and getting it done than anything else. I'm not saying they don't have a life. I'm saying, like, they don't get distracted. They don't have a short attention span. They don't want to change something up every 2 seconds. They just do the work. You might hear from them every couple of weeks, but their focus is about the task at hand, the day at hand, and then the next day, and the next day. They do it for weeks and months and years, and that's how you get better. The biggest impediment to progress outside of injury or sickness for athletes, and we talk about this like your ability to succeed in I think most things in life, honestly, but in triathlon and in endurance sports is to be available. And athletes who are available to train more than 87% have a very high percentage over people to achieve their goals over people who don't. It's about having an attention span. And I'll be honest with me too. Like, I hope this doesn't sound cocky, but like I fully believe I could if I kept the attention span for a long enough period of time and didn't let other things kind of choose to let other things get in the way, I could be on the podium at an Ironman event. I think I could be close to qualifying for Kona in my age group, no matter what age group it is, if I didn't get distracted. Let myself get distracted, right? Like, you can, like, as a coach, that, and I know you've struggled with this too in the last year or two, and I fully believe you have the same ability. I've always said that. I've told you that. Like, I think you have that raw athletic ability to achieve that, and as coaches, it's super hard sometimes to balance your investment, because your time, your energy investment. That's why you see, the best coaches in the world, they don't do triathlon. they either used to and they stopped, or they just don't, or they don't do it anymore. They retired, or they just, felt that they can't coach other people, to Kona, and or do anything, or you have to make a choice, right? Because it's so demanding. But yeah, I do think that, but I do think even one of my, downfalls is being distracted and not just kind of saying it out, year after year after year, because I think you see this too, like we're very similar in this way. Like, I'll go through periods where I just run because I don't make the time to bike and swim. I put other things in front of that, which to me, it's totally fine. I don't regret that. But then I always get myself right back to the same level of, sub 440, 70.3 shape, which has kind of been that's my peak. And I keep getting back there. And then every time I do it, I think, what if you hadn't just not stopped, right? What if you just kept going from one more year consecutively? What do you think you could get back to? And then either do it or you don't. And I think this is the time of year where you decide if that's what you want to do. And it doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean going all in right now, right? Doesn't mean doing 16 hours a week. Doesn't mean crushing yourself, with long rides on the trainer. Doesn't mean doing this and doing that. But it does mean making a plan, staying focused, and committing to it, and understanding that October, November, December, January, February, March are more important than April, May, June, July, August, September. Yeah. That's a fact.
Yeah.
You don't race during them, right? For the most part, your big races, for most athletes, don't happen during the period of time. But the foundation, right, in which you build it and you create this, and not just create fitness, but create habits, create boundaries, have better time management, stay focused. That's when the pieces really come together. So I love that focus, and I love that. I love the fact you had a talk with yourself. I think every athlete has that when they have a turning point to kind of been like, hey, because other people can pump you up. Other people can give you a pep talk. And guess what? It usually goes in one ear, not the other, or it lasts for about all of, 20 seconds. It's external. The real motivation that lasts, that gets you to where you want to go, comes from, internal factors. And I think that kind of conversation you have with each other is really great. It's a great lesson for all athletes.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, I was talking to Emily last night we were talking about like boredom in general and how easy it is to sort of falsely alleviate it by going to your phone or getting distracted by, whatever. And it just resonates with me. And I think that we as a society have kind of like normalized that behavior, and every once in a while my mom will look at me and she'll go, "What are you doing on your phone?" And I'm like, "I don't know." It's a really good question. And it kind of feels like a little bit of a, wake up call. And I'm like, well, that time right there that I just was ever, I could, like this morning, I've been swimming, and today I was like, I'm going to go out and start my day with just an easy short run, 20 minutes. And it was so interesting because I got going, and I definitely didn't feel great because I'm kind of a slow waker, but as I got going, I was, the shadow was on the side, right? So I could see what I was doing or how it looked. And I was like, what am I doing, man? like it was just kind of this, it really looked to me like an Ironman shuffle a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I could do that all day probably. But that's not what I want to be doing right now. I want to be running again. You know what I mean? I think we get, that's a trap too. And while I said I'm going to go run, and I decided to go for 20 minutes, and it took me about 5 or 10 to get into it. But then I just started thinking a little more about my form and actually running. And that's been my kind of mindset right now, is to do things right now that you don't necessarily always do during the season, but with the long-term purpose of your goal, right? And it's like swimming hard in the pool. You know, maybe I'm not doing 4,000 every time, but I'm working to get faster and stronger and have better form. And those are the things that are difficult to do in the peak seasons, you know, and when we're building, and it's just a little harder. So why not cement that stuff now? That's kind of how I've been thinking about it, is like, I've been thinking about form a lot, because I think, and just the ability to hold form. It's easy for me to go out for 20 minutes and kind of run, quote unquote, like I can run, but there's no, like for me, just to go out, and I'm not saying go hard necessarily, but I'm just like, you know, stand up a little straighter, you know, get a little more, I guess, taut with your body, instead of just kind of ronk, you know, that kind of running. I don't know, you know, I just think that I've sort of fallen into a little bit of a trap over time, because, you know, it's just like, you know, I can go out there and do a race, I can slog through it or whatever, but that's not really what I want, you know? And so to me, that comes back to working on these things now. And when I talk about building strength, that means like building strength to hold form, and do it in a manageable way. You know, if I run 20, 30 minutes every day or every other day and really work on those things, I think, boy, what kind of a difference that would make coming into next spring. If I could keep that up, like you're saying, keep the attention to detail right now. And you don't have to race an Ironman anytime soon, but that's the kind of the relief part of it, right? You can go out and work on things that you always wanted to work on. It's no different than when I used to talk about joining a band. And I really, for the longest time, for maybe the first year and a half, I never even was in a band, but I started playing drums, and I just worked on form and you know, practicing stuff that was hard to me. And then over time, but it took forever, and I'm still a terrible drummer, but I think I'm more of a natural athlete, obviously. But so that always comes into my head, this form and technique and things like that, and really kind of dialing that in, because not only does it make you better, it makes it easier. You know, doing anything with good form makes the sport a lot easier, right? So if you get to the point where you just really just trying to get workouts in, and it's always a battle, it's sometimes running or swimming feels a lot easier. And I think a lot of times that just comes down, and we did it with more relaxation and better form and things like that. And it doesn't have to be as hard as we always make it.
I love everything you just said.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, honestly, that's something that I've been talking to with the athletes I work with, and actually having that conversation with myself. I think everything you said about attention is 100% accurate. And I think that is one of the, and again, like, just like I had told the athlete this morning via email, I said the best, you know, being successful is about who has the longest attention span, who's able to stay focused the longest period of time, who's able to, you know, not deviate to do something new, because seeing it through just isn't, you know, like we all have these people who, I mentioned this guy like probably 50 times on the podcast, but I used to work for this brilliant guy. He had 50 things halfway done and nothing finished, because as soon as he would have another idea, he'd be on the next one, on the next one, and on the next one, and on the next one. Never completed it. Athletes are so much the same. And one of the main issues you see with athletes, and this is one of the reasons we get inquiries all the time about training plans or coaching, is that in order to, an easier way to set yourself up for success for keeping an attention span is to know what's about to happen, right? And self-coached athletes sometimes struggle with that. If you create your own plan, you don't really know what you should do. It's hard to stay focused on something that you don't know is there, right? Or you don't have someone taking care of the work for you, or you don't have a training plan to follow. So you just they get distracted, or you just do what you want to, which isn't really, you know, keeping an attention span on something specific, right? On training, it's just kind of keeping your attention, you know, stimulated. right? I think that's a huge thing for athletes, and this time of year is the perfect time to find specific ways to keep your attention, because it doesn't need to be on. Let's say your goal is to go sub 13 hours next year at Ironman Wisconsin. You've always felt like you just never really put in the training or figured it out. When you wake up tomorrow, your goal, your reason for putting on your shoes, for getting on your bike, for getting in the pool shouldn't be going sub 13. You strip it down to the bare bones, and you say, what do I need? What's required? What can I do now to put myself in position to be ready? Like we use the phrase train so you can train, so you can train the way you need to train to race well. Right now you're in the first part of the train. Don't jump to the end of the train, right? Don't go all in. Prepare yourself, right? Because there's only so long you can keep attention, right? And again, a lot of the best athletes know that about themselves. Hey, man, like I've got these goals, but listen, I can really only do and focus on Ironman style training for like 6 weeks. What can we do with that? They're like, well, I got to get creative, but at least you recognize, right? One of the biggest strengths is knowing, understanding, and being aware of your weaknesses. You get athletes are like, hey, I know you want me to do this, but if you give me this plan and and it's 10 hours of X, Y, and Z, I don't like certain things. I know I'm not going to do certain things, even though I know you want me to. I'm only going to do it 60% because I don't like the other things, or I'm not going to make time, or it doesn't fit my schedule, or whatever. That could be good excuses. That could be ridiculous, petty excuses. There's still excuses, and you're still leaving room to not get things done. But what I can do is provide this, and this. And if you give me this level of 8 to 9 hours, I'll do 100% every week. And you calculate that up over 30 weeks. You get 2 hours of extra work in every week, 60 hours, right? That's months and months of extra training you just got in because things were right. Your attention, your span was engaged. It's a great sign for a coach when you think, oh, I really enjoyed this workout. You're like, gotcha. Because like, that you balance the line between appropriately challenging, also getting the right stimulus and doing the right work with also, because listen, a lot of athletes have training ADHD. They need to be what we call entertained. They like the entertainment. It has to be entertaining or they're not going to do it, even though it might not be good for them. But you got to keep it. So go to skill work, like you said, high RPM work, big gear work on the bike, in swimming, do shorter stuff, technique based, that you're not being exhausted when you go, something to get you to go, right? And the biggest thing, especially this time of year, and I saw myself yesterday, last week, I didn't do anything. And I messed up my lower back. I was just feeling really uncomfortable. After having not done anything for a week, for anyone, I think this is it. Your first inclination is to not do something again. You just did 7 days because now you've created a pattern, right? In your body, in your mind, in your motivation to not do anything because you just did nothing for 7 days. Your body and your mind, in my opinion, is always going to be kind of resilient to or resistant to you doing anything because like, no, I'm enjoying not doing anything, and your attention starts to go to like, oh, well, I could not do this. Like, what's another week? I could do this. I can do this. A lot of people say this. I'm just waiting for motivation to kick in.
Mm-hmm.
Motivation for most people follows movement. Motivation follows movement. It's not the other way around. Saying you're going to wait to get motivated, you might be waiting until the cows come home. You might be waiting until 2030. Or you might be waiting until you're dead. You can't wait for motivation. You got to move to get it. So yesterday I got on my bike, I rode for an hour. I looked down at the clock after about 20 minutes. I thought I was going to say 2.5 hours. And it was like 19 minutes and 37 seconds. I was like, yeah. It seemed like I was on there for an eternity. But I was like, you know what? And in every ounce of my being, because I had not done anything the last week, was resistance. Just get off, man. Like 30's fine. First day back, 30's fine. It's good. Check the box. I was like, no, you said you're going to get on for an hour. You're going to stay for an hour. And then I immediately, when I got done with it, because my mood before it was like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it, but I'm doing it anyway. I had no motivation to get on the bike. Zero. But I told myself when I woke up, I was going to do it today anyway. Because if I don't do it today, the likelihood of me doing anything on Tuesday goes down. and I don't do anything Monday and Tuesday, yeah, I get the higher percentage of not doing anything goes down again. So if you want to make this easier on yourself, don't wait for motivation, get moving. I woke up this morning at 4:30, went out and did my run, came back, grabbed waffles, did my Kenyan shuffle for 2 miles, got in 5 miles, and I feel like a new man. Am I on top of the world motivated? No, but I picked something to work on. Right. And to me right now, I know, and I think this is harder for a lot of athletes with their attention or what they get a gratification from and kind of endorphins from is like what I've found in the past is in order for me to get in like the best groove of kind of process oriented training this time of year, so far away from a race where, yeah, you can picture crossing a finish line or going to the red carpet or standing on a podium, but it's so far away. You're almost kind of like fooling yourself. The best I've ever, not best I've ever been, but the best grooves I've ever continued with and sustained where I just told myself, you know what, for the next few weeks, just do as much easy work as you possibly can. That's it. Every day. Just get as much easy work as you possibly can. Move as much as you can. That's my goal. See how much cycling, running, swimming I can get in the next, not like 20 hours a week. Not to me irresponsible. I'm not going for the Olympics, but just a nice aerobic work. Because guess what? It feels good. It's refreshing. It's also good for my base for next year, but it's easy, right? And guess what else? There's no expectations tied to any of it. I don't care about pace. Zero. I give zero fucks about pace right now. Power on the bike? Don't care. Can I breathe through my nose? Yep. Check. On the run, do I feel refreshed when I'm doing it? Can I breathe through my nose? Check. Done. Haven't gotten the pull yet this week, but I will. Check. Done. That's it. Simplistic stuff. Because what I've also found, again, about myself, but also with tons and tons of athletes that I'm sure you found the same thing, is that if you can care about the workouts that you used to not care about, or that if you can care about the least exciting workouts, then you'll do all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you only care about the ones with intensity or things to keep you entertained, or can you set a PR in, and that's the only thing to keep you going, good luck to you. It's not going to last. So it's a great time here to find a skill, find something specific to work on just to keep you moving, because moving is better than not moving.
Yeah, and you said it, man. You brought up that word resistance, and I always go back to Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art and how he talks about nobody gets anything done in life because of resistance. And resistance comes in many forms. It can be an extra cup of coffee before you go out. It could be this morning, the great example. I had this thing. I'm going to get up, put on my stuff, and go running. And I got up, and I didn't feel like running. And I looked over and I saw my comfy sweats just sitting there ready to put on.
Oh, dude.
I was like, there they are. And then right next to them, and this probably goes hand in hand with that, lay out your gear, because luckily my running shorts were right next to them. And so were my shoes. And I was like, those sweats though. And then I decided to put on my running shorts, and the shoes were there. They happened to have socks in them. And I put them on, and I went downstairs. I was halfway, done. I was in. Yeah, I didn't feel like it at all, but I was ready. And I just walked out the door and started walking down the street. I'm like, just walk. And I'm like, nope, just start running and just do it. And it happened. But it's resistance, and it can be the phone. It can be anything. Like you're saying, that I love that the guy that had 50 projects halfway done. That's what happens to us. And, back to the boredom thing. It's like we have so many options to fill boredom, but so many are unproductive or whatever, and they don't really put you on the right track. And it's just I think the piece you said about, and with the skill work or finding something that excites you to work on that isn't, painted around the finish line or the medal or the, post race celebration or I did it kind of stuff. But like, how do you get better? Because like you said, I love it when athletes say, I love that workout. And a lot of times that is appropriately challenging. It was good enough, but it felt good. And you like working out more when you're better, when you're stronger at stuff. You start to find these, I really enjoy that because it gets easier in a way, even though you're working hard. So that's why I come back to this working on form and just being, building up your body in a way that makes working out easier and more enjoyable. And then that sort of snowballs with itself. I think once I'm sure by the end of the week, I'll be looking forward to these 20-minute runs, or whatever. And I have been looking forward to the pool because I've been getting better, and I started swimming a lot for Ironman and more than I ever have. And I kind of enjoy it. And now I like going because I enjoy swimming because I'm getting pretty decent at it, and it doesn't feel like a big chore. And now I can pay attention to little things a little more while I'm swimming and work on things and just keep getting better. And then you start seeing little, some of these numbers creeping in. You're like, okay, that didn't feel that hard. So something must be clicking here. And then as long as it's not too massive of a goal, but it's these little things that just you pay attention to. And I think it's important to really write these things down sometimes just to remember, because it's so easy just to kind of get lost in the mud of the training and you don't really appreciate the little wins. But the little wins are the ones that really pay off over time, and especially if you start winning now.
Engagement is such a great word, because it's how long can you stay engaged, and what you're engaged in doesn't have to always be a one-liner or the finish line of this specific race at this specific time, right? Like, I understood myself, like I tracked my HRV and I had a horrible score yesterday morning, one of the worst I've ever had. And most people, when they track their HRV, how you sleep and it's supposed to be a gauge of, how ready you are to train the next day. A lot of people just choose not to do anything. Well, what it always tells me, same with my resting heart rate overnight, it doesn't tell me to not train. It tells me that I usually haven't trained. That my heart has become unhealthy. That because I haven't used it in a week, right? Like overall, because I didn't do shit last week. I just sat around and I saw a significant difference in my nighttime, my overnight resting heart rate, and my HRV. And again, like I think a lot of people see those numbers and they're like, oh, well, it's telling me not to work out today. I think yesterday I woke up and was my first red of like 3 of the entire last year. And the other 2 times I was sick. I wasn't sick. I was lazy. I was becoming unfit. I could legit see and feel, right, talking about the coffee and like drinking too much coffee last week because I wasn't exercising, because exercising gives you the boost, right? It gives you energy, right? It makes you feel good. All these things that coffee does for you too. But when you're not working out, you just grab a cup of coffee, sit back on your couch, open up Training Peaks, a little more work. And to me, it wasn't a signal of, oh, you definitely shouldn't train today, you're not feeling it. It was, you better get your ass up and get back to being healthy, right? And one of the things that when I was getting in real good shape before Madison was I was doing breathing exercise. I was doing my meditation. I was doing mobility work all before I went to sleep. Guess what I hadn't done the last 4 weeks? Zero of it. Right. Which is, it's so common. Like everyone does this. Like and I even get on to athletes about this all the time. They go to PT and they fix this niggle and they get things back on whack, and then they're healthy and then they stop.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, why are you stopping? We all do it, right? We always forget what got us here, but we're like, but I don't want to go. So last night before bed, do my mobility, do my breathing exercises, doing my meditation, and everything was it markedly better this morning? No, but it all improved, and it worked out yesterday. All things that you kind of check the box that are good. That's what you're supposed to do is to stay engaged, right? In doing it and monitoring your, attention span and what it's going to take. Cause that's just the biggest thing is becoming distracted and not having, the ability to stay engaged it's a huge thing. And again, it doesn't have to be, again, you shouldn't be thinking about your finish line 8 months from now, because honestly, it gets old, right? Like you should dig that out like when you really needed like an interval, not for your 30-minute run. And, you got to use it kind of sparingly, that kind of external motivation. A lot of you right now, we just need to be healthy, get up to move things. It's a big deal, the attention span. And I'll share another little bit of, vulnerability. I think that's one of the reasons people enjoy the podcast. We're super, vulnerable about and just honest about things. Is earlier, I think it was like 3 days ago, I was scrolling through Facebook, and if you're a coach or a triathlete, a lot of people that are racing. I probably know 20 people racing in Kona. And so of course your Facebook feed is Kona, Kona, Kona. Like, people are ready to leave for Kona. Like and I'm not a big Facebook person anyway about my personal life. But it's like, boarding the plane to Kona, on the plane to Kona, hour into Kona on the flight, 2 hours into the flight in Kona. Like, are all pictures, like, road to Kona, landed in Kona. Here's the flight attendant at the airport in Kona. Here's the cab I got to in Kona. Everything is Kona, Kona, Kona.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked myself, I said, this is annoying as fuck. Like, I get it, you're there and that's happy, but like, we all get it. And then I also asked myself, are you annoyed with them or are you annoyed with you?
Yeah.
Are you annoyed because they've done the work the last few years to get there and you haven't? Because I legit think I could go if I put in a long enough training block and stuck to it and hadn't. I know I have that self-confidence and I think awareness of my ability. And I said, you know what? You're right. Yeah, do I think people overpost on Facebook? Sure. But I'm more annoyed with me. And that's kind of when I shifted my mind back to a little bit to like appreciating what's been created there, right? And going back to watching, the NBC World Championships, and I was like, no, the fact is, yeah, and then also I said, well, if you're really annoyed, you're double annoyed at yourself because one, you chose to follow this person, right, on Facebook, and then two, you continue to look at it and see you're annoyed with yourself, right? I think we all do that. Like we project these things in our own realities. It's like one of the some book I call about the 5 agreements or 3 agreements or whatever. And one of them is like, we all have our own separate realities, right? And we always kind of push on other people, and your annoyance with someone else might be that you're annoyed with that same exact trait of yours.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. I see that a lot with like family members. You're like, oh, why are you so, and you're like, God, we're this, damn it. Right. It's like, everybody doesn't want to grow up and become their mom or dad. And what do you do when you're 40? You're like, damn it, I did the exact same thing. And no, so I think that's, I think I was more annoyed with myself than with anybody else. But I think it's good, right? Like you had that talk with you, talk with yourself, a hard conversation. We all need those. And I think understanding for me that, you listen, you said the same thing about yourself. You don't have much longer, which I don't know. I don't think that's true or not, but I say the same thing to me. I mean, you said the same thing to me in so many words earlier this year. You said this might be your last shot, because as Hayden gets bigger, older, and things are already more important, and more time being consumed. I mean, I ain't get any younger. So yeah, maybe my time is now. But listen, recognizing those things instead of making excuses, I think is a really positive thing in all aspects of life, and in great ways to kind of bubble up some intrinsic motivation. And honestly, just we all need to be that honest with ourselves about where we are and why we are where we are, and not where we wish we could be.
Wow, that was a tongue twister. But I agree.
Yeah.
But 100% on this, when you see people posting things, and it's A, why are we looking at it, if it annoys you? And B, it certainly is something inside of you, and it always is. It's always like, for me, I know that there's something in there that's like, here they go again. They're at the podium or whatever. And I'm mad because I'm not putting in the work, and you believe in it or whatever. But I deal with that a lot. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a tough subject. I think you mentioned something about don't think of the finish line right now when you're on a 30-minute run, and that's exactly true. I've been thinking, like, for me, a motivator is a weird one. I think about literally coming out of T2 and seeing you or Emily or who, or my mom or whatever, and just waving and giving like a legit thumbs up, like, hey, I feel good today. Like, that's the feeling I keep looking for, and I had it coming out of the water this year up there, and it was because of one thing. I worked my ass off in the water to get to that point. And I felt strong. And man, it wasn't anything pretty. It was just like legit time put in the pool. And now it's like, okay, yeah, you can get through a bike. We can all get through a bike. But can you get through it so you can give that thumbs up out of T2 and really feel legit? Like, I really have it today, or I feel good. And then know that you've done the work to actually execute that run. And I can't ever really say that. I never feel that way coming off the bike, even though I feel okay sometimes, but I don't really believe that I've put in the work that, like I keep talking about, starts now for next year. And that's why I think also, we have a tendency to get mad at ourselves in that situation, right? And it's like a lot of times it becomes, damn it, I must not have fueled right, or whatever the case may be. But you know what it was probably? You're mad at yourself because deep down you didn't put in the work.
Yep.
And then it hits home like a sledgehammer on that marathon, And I felt that. And that's why I get through that first loop and I'm like, just so mad at myself. I'm like, why am I doing this again? Because it isn't why am I doing Ironman again? It's because why am I doing Ironman the same again? Or roughly the same. That's why I think there's anger involved. And it's kind of hard to articulate sometimes, but I do think that there's something in there. That's like you had talked about once, something about being more intimidated by the training or lack thereof that you put in before the race than the race itself. That something like that. And I think there's really a lot of lesson there inside of that.
I think for most of us in racing and, in life, at some point you need to be fed up with yourself, right? In certain ways, like, and none of us are perfect, right? And if you want to make changes, you got to recognize it, right? And it has to be offensive, right? Like, you see people who go through, massive weight loss. Like it wasn't like they just woke up and just thought about it. They've been thinking about it. They've also been thinking about reasons to not do it or to put it off, or I can't do that. At some point, you got to be fed up with the excuses that you make, right? And instead of being aggravated or annoyed at certain things. And I love what you said about, I got to the first loop and I was like, why do I keep doing the same Ironman the same way every time? Yeah, and that's, I always heard the phrase, like, if you want a different result, do things differently. If you want to continue the same thing, the same result. That's the same with training. Like, people always bemoan, like, I tell people all the time, like, you get you get out what you put in, and you're not putting in enough, or what you're putting in is way, way off from what you are expecting to get out of what you're putting in. Right. It's like saying, I'm putting in 2 + 2, but I'm expecting 19. Sorry, you need to go to a different math class. Like, that's not how it works, and you can get away with things sometimes and be okay with that. But, like, are you really okay with it? And I'm the same way. And I've said this before on many of our podcasts, was like, when I'm in my best shape overall is when I'm 100% focused on swimming. And I'm swimming 3 times a week and I'm swimming well. That's why I was so super disappointed and frustrated at Madison 7.3, because I swam that, and I have never talked about that race, so maybe we'll at some point, but I got out of the water and I swam at legit Ironman swim pace. I swam as easy as I possibly could, and I came out of the water, I think 4th in my age group, top 50 overall. It's about 30-minute. I was like, see, that's what happens when you fucking focus, right? And you do your actual swim training, because it impacts everything in a positive way. It's the details. It's the stuff that, in the past, like, Ohio last year, and I readily admitted that while I had a decent race, my race was done midway through the swim. Midway. My race was done. Dew point aside, everything else aside, my race was done from what I could have done halfway through the swim. Because I didn't swim enough. There's a fact. Biked a lot, ran a lot, just feel like swimming. When I'm on it firing on all cylinders. Not just one cylinder. Not just one. All 3. Right? You don't have to do that all year long, but you have to respect that. If you want to be really, really good at something, you have to do well at all 3 of them. You have to focus at all 3 of them. Yeah, one cannot be your favorite at some point in time, but you got to work at them all. And that's it. And yeah, it's, listen, you're like, oh, well, aren't you a coach? I'm like, yes, I am. Easier said than done. And for all people, that's why people hire coaches. It's because they want someone to tell them what to do, keep them in line, provide a plan. But no, I think it's that time of year. People spend way too much time already thinking about the races they want to do in 2023, and they want to sign up for this because they have FOMO. I'm like, before you do anything, before you click the register button and start staring at your laptop, go take a little glance in the mirror. Look yourself hard in the eyes. what did I really accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? Am I in this to just do races or events? Or am I in this to get better? And if I am, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to sacrifice? What am I, do I have the ability to keep a longer attention span? Do I have this? Because that's a conversation you have to ask sometimes as a coach. Like, listen, like I know you want to do this, this, and this, but last year you only proved you could do this. You're adding 9 more thises. I'm not sure we can do 2 more, right? So let's start at the beginning, create, because once you start to create momentum, that's the beauty. Because then because once you put week after week after week together, then the same is true of when you're not doing anything. Like I talked about, it feeling really, really hard to bike because of what I had done is for a week, not done anything. So my body was resistant to it. Once you gain momentum in doing things, your body becomes resistant to not doing things. And then taking a day off seems weird, right? An easy 2K swim seems like a day off, right? A 30-minute run seems like, a relaxing choice day. That's when you're in a great groove. In order to get there, you got to create habits. There's quite a few athletes just this week who's been really, really struggling with time management and getting things in. And I plopped in a 3-week block and I just said, the next 3 weeks, all we're focusing on is building habits and time management. 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here. All you got to do is check the box. Because if you want to be your best, you can't shoot for the stars. You got to build the freaking rocket ship first. Most people want to just, do something different. Like you got to start at the beginning, create good habits, set boundaries, be better with time management, which is something that people are horrible with. You didn't run out of time. You chose to devote other time to wasteful things that you got nothing out of, right? Every day, you don't work out or you miss a session or you say, I didn't have time for this today. Open up your iPhone and go to screen time. And double check your work. And then come back and tell me or anyone or me to myself that you didn't have time today. I mean, you're probably going to see hours on there of mindlessly doing it. It's addiction that I think everyone has to a different degree, but it sucks the life out of you. And it also removes you from a whole lot of life. So yeah, that's your swift kick in the pants. Attention span, staying engaged, and those are huge things. That's like, one of the things we don't do a very good job of promoting ourselves, but we did just throw out on our Facebook group, our closed group, again, that's Crushing Iron. Then also I think on Instagram today, that we are going to be doing some race specific training plans this next year. Just for a few races, we're doing a training plan and packages specific for each race, not just a generic 12-week, 20-week plan for all races, but specific. We're doing Wisconsin 70.3, Des Moines 70.3, Chat 70.3. Then we're also doing plans for Ironman Texas, Ironman Chattanooga, Ironman Wisconsin. Those are going to be $4.99. They are going to include an 8-week prep plan for November, December to kind of get you ready to train. And then they'll include a 20-plus week pre-built race-specific plan. That'll include a monthly group Zoom call. So let's say you're signing up for Ironman Wisconsin. January 1st, hop on a Zoom call with your other 19 other Ironman Wisconsin training buddies, and I'll be doing a Zoom call going over your first phase of training. And I've got that outlined on the images and on Facebook and also on Instagram. You'll have event group Facebook page, access to our online hub, and then all those plans are delivered through Training Peaks. We also have our Ironman Wisconsin and Ironman Wisconsin 70.3 training package, which is you get training plan plus camp for only $7.99. So pretty substantial discount when the plan itself is $4.99, the camp itself is $4.25, and all those are limited to 20 people. Again, all the info in a much more presentable fashion for your eyes is in our Facebook group, Crushing Iron Group, and then also on Instagram. And if you have any questions about any of that, you can email Summer at c26operations@gmail.com. Those packages go on sale November 1st, and we're only going to have those open through December 15th because it's a pretty limited quantity we're going to do those for. But then there is a link provided, and Summer can get that to you too if you're not on Facebook or Instagram, where you can sign up as you're interested in one of the following events, and then you can get early bird registration. So that's what we're doing this year. Again, people need to stay engaged. It's a confusing time for a lot of people in terms of planning out next year and not knowing what to do and not knowing when to do it. We've had a lot of success at a lot of races, those ones specifically. And also I both fully understand that not everybody is in a place to be fully coached financially, but also just from a personal standpoint. Some people don't like the thought of being coached and just want a training plan. I think honestly, not only is it a great opportunity to get really good coaching via a training plan and connection and community via the Zoom calls and the group you're doing it with, but it's also, I think, with the Zoom call layout, going over all the phases, it's a great educational opportunity to learn about the different phases of training and to learn as you go, not just to buy a PDF online. So those are available starting November 1st, but the more details are on social media or emailing c26operations@gmail.com.
I like that. It's a good plan. It's a good time for it.
Phew, I can't imagine doing that every podcast.
What? Oh.
Oh God! Like, so we're never doing a sponsor and ad like that. That took everything out of me. Like, I felt like a sleazy salesman, but it's just it's part of the deal. At least we're doing it for ourselves, and it's not trying to sell you some the newest watch and to support us. Throw in discount codes, and it's the one that I use all the time. You're like, wait a minute, didn't you promote another watch last month?
Yeah,
I was exhausted. Yeah, and I'm really glad we don't have to interject those 3 times into our podcast. We can just go with the flow.
Yeah, well, I would just throw it out there. It wasn't a hard sell or anything like that. And really, like, I mean, people are going to love it. People want it, It's like, isn't that what they say about sales? You just convince them that that's really what they want.
That's what they say. Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's a hell of a plan.
Yeah, people have asked. People ask all the time. We used to not do them for a variety of reasons, but I think it's we want to help people, and I think in order to help people, not just with their training, but be a part of a great community. That's something you got to do. But yeah, it's see how it goes. Again, head to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for full-time coaching, you can click on the tab there and find the coach you feel is best for you. And then, as always, Mike's available, crushingiron@gmail.com. Or for anything from me specifically, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Well, get at it.
Touch boy.
All right. Talk to you later.